My name is Amber Sullivan, 28 years old and a sergeant in the United States Army. After 8 long years of service, missing 7 Christmases with my family, I was finally coming home. I'd counted down the days, packed my bags and even bought presents. Then my phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Don't bother coming home." My heart sank, but I only replied fine. 7 days later, I woke up to 20 missed calls from my family and 1 from their lawyer. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you're new here. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. I grew up in Portland, Maine, in a beautiful colonial-style house with a perfect view of the harbor. From the outside, the Sullivans looked like the ideal American family. My father, Richard, built his construction company from the ground up, becoming one of the most respected businessmen in town. My mother, Diana, gave up her teaching career to help run the family business and raise us 3 kids. My older brother Travis was groomed from birth to take over the company someday. My younger sister Jessica was the academic star heading to medical school. And then there was me, the middle child who never quite fit the Sullivan mold. "Amber, why can't you just follow the plan like your brother?" Dad would ask whenever I showed interest in anything outside the family business. "Sullivan Construction has your name on it too," but I had different dreams. While Travis shadowed Dad at construction sites and Jessica collected academic awards, I joined ROTC in high school and fell in love with the structure, purpose, and camaraderie. The day I announced my intention to enlist instead of attending the business school Dad had already paid a deposit for was the first time I saw him truly lose control. "No daughter of mine is going to waste her life taking orders and getting shot at," he roared, his face turning that dangerous shade of red that always signaled a Sullivan family storm. "Richard, please," my mother pleaded, always the peacekeeper. "I've made my decision, Dad," I said, standing my ground even as my hands trembled. "I ship out next month." "Then you're no longer welcome in this house," he said coldly. My mother gasped. Travis looked away uncomfortably. Jessica started crying. "Richard, you don't mean that?" my grandmother Eleanor said. She was the only one who ever stood up to my father. "This is Amber's choice to make. It's a stupid choice. He's fat, and she'll regret it." I left for basic training with only my grandmother's blessing. The next 8 years were a blur of desert landscapes, military bases, and combat zones. Basic training nearly broke me physically, but mentally, it was the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere. Drill sergeants didn't care about my family name or expectations, only that I pushed my limits and had my team's back. That's where I met Cassandra Cass Brooks. We survived boot camp together, got assigned to the same unit, and eventually deployed to Afghanistan side by side. She became the sister I never really had in Jessica. "You know, Sullivan," Cass said one night during our first deployment, as we sat watching the stars from our base, "most people join to escape something or find something. Which one are you?" "Both, I guess," I admitted. Escaping expectations, finding myself. My first tour was difficult. The heat, the danger, the homesickness. But I discovered I was good at my job, cool under pressure, respected by my peers. I earned commendations, then medals. During my second tour, our unit was ambushed while escorting a medical convoy. Without thinking, I led a counteroffensive that saved 12 lives, including 2 local children. The Army awarded me the Silver Star. I sent the newspaper clipping home. My mother called crying with pride. Jessica sent a card. Travis texted congratulations. From my father, silence. Communication with my family remained sparse and formal over the years. My mother would call on holidays, careful never to mention my father directly. Jessica occasionally shared updates about her psychology studies she'd switched from medicine. Travis sent in personal Christmas cards signed from the Sullivan family. The only consistent connection was my grandmother Eleanor, who wrote me actual letters on cream-colored stationery. "Your grandfather would be so proud of you," she wrote after my promotion to sergeant. "He served in Korea, you know, though your father never likes to mention it." The Sullivan men were not all businessmen, no matter what Richard believes. When my grandmother suffered a minor stroke last October, I decided it was time to come home, at least for Christmas. My commanding officer, Captain Marcus Wilson, supported my decision. "Family is complicated, Sullivan," he said when I requested the holiday leave. "But, at some point, you have to face it." I reached out first to my mother, then to my siblings. Their responses seemed cautiously positive. "Of course, we want you home for Christmas," my mother wrote. "It's been too long." "About time," was Travis's reply. "Can't wait to see you." Jessica texted with actual exclamation points. I allowed myself to hope. After 8 years, maybe the wounds had healed, maybe my father had softened. Maybe this Christmas would be the reconciliation I'd secretly been waiting for. I was wrong. 3 days before my scheduled departure from base, my phone buzzed with a text. I was packing my duffel bag, carefully wrapping the gifts I'd bought for everyone, a handcrafted jewelry box for Mom, a vintage compass for Travis, psychology books for Jessica, and a cashmere scarf for Grandma Eleanor. The notification showed Dad. My heart stuttered. This was the first direct communication from him in 8 years. With trembling fingers, I opened the message. "We've moved on with our lives. Your room is Travis's home office now. Don't bother coming home for Christmas. It will only upset your mother." I read it 3 times, each word a punch to the gut. The dismissal, the finality, the way he weaponized my mother's feelings while I knew he was only protecting his own. My first instinct was to call Mom, but I stopped myself. How many times had she chosen peace over standing up for me? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I started typing lengthy responses, deleting each one. In the end, I just wrote, fine. That single word contained years of hurt, anger, and resignation. It was acceptance that some relationships couldn't be fixed, no matter how much you wanted them to be. Captain Wilson found me sitting on my bunk, staring at nothing. Sullivan, thought you'd be halfway to the airport by now. I handed him my phone without a word. He read the message, his expression darkening. Your father's a fool, he said finally, handing the phone back. Looks like I'll be here for Christmas, after all, I said, trying to sound casual as I began unpacking the gifts. Like hell you will. Cass appeared in the doorway. My parents have a house in Vermont. They already invited you, remember? Now you're just out of excuses. I don't want to intrude on your family Christmas. Shut up, Sullivan. Cass grabbed my half-empty duffel and started refilling it. My mom already bought you a stocking with your name on it. I appreciate it, but I hesitated. I think I need some time alone to process everything. Captain Wilson nodded. Your leave is approved either way, Sergeant. Use it how you need to. That night, I made a decision. I would still go to Maine, but not to my family's home. I found a small rental cabin near my hometown, a place to retreat, reflect, and maybe find some closure. I modified my travel plans and notified my commanding officer. The journey home was long and lonely. As the plane descended through clouds toward Portland, memories flooded back. Childhood Christmases with stockings hanging from the ornate fireplace, the smell of my mother's cinnamon rolls, sledding with Travis and Jessica on the hill behind our house. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what I had lost, or perhaps never really had. The rental cabin was nothing like the Sullivan family home, small, rustic, with mismatched furniture and a temperamental heating system, but it was clean, quiet, and mine for the next 2 weeks. After settling in, I drove to the local grocery store for supplies. As I debated between cereal brands, a familiar voice called my name. Amber? Amber Sullivan, is that you? Rachel Thomas, my best friend from high school, stood there with a shopping basket. Her curly hair was shorter now and she looked tired but happy. Rachel. I dropped my basket and hugged her, suddenly grateful for a friendly face. Oh my God, when did you get back? Are you home for good? Why didn't you tell anyone you were coming? The questions tumbled out of her. Just got in today. I'm on leave for Christmas, I explained, deliberately vague. Your parents must be thrilled. I ran into your mom at the pharmacy last week and she didn't mention anything. I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. It was sort of last minute. Rachel's expression shifted as she read between the lines. You're not staying with them, are you? I rented a cabin up by Crystal Lake. She nodded slowly. Want to grab coffee? Catch up properly. Over coffee, I gave Rachel the abbreviated version that there was tension with my father, that I needed space. I'm not surprised, she said finally. Your dad's been different these past few years, more controlling from what my parents say. They used to do business with Sullivan Construction until your dad suddenly dropped their contract without explanation. What do you mean? I don't know the details, just that there have been rumors, changes in the business. People let go without notice. She hesitated. He tells everyone you refuse to come home, by the way. Has for years. The revelation stung more than it should have. While I'd been defending my country, my father had been rewriting my story to anyone who would listen. Well, I said, finishing my coffee, I'm home now, whether he likes it or not. The next morning, a sharp knock on the cabin door startled me awake. I instinctively reached for a weapon that wasn't there before remembering where I was. 8 years in combat zones creates habits that don't disappear overnight. I peered through the peephole to see my grandmother Eleanor standing there, leaning on her cane but looking determined as ever. Were you planning to tell me you were in town? She demanded when I opened the door, but her stern expression quickly melted into a smile. Oh, look at you. Still standing at attention like a proper soldier. I relaxed my posture and hugged her, careful not to squeeze too hard. She felt smaller than I remembered, more fragile. How did you find me? I asked, ushering her inside and taking her coat. Rachel's mother called me. This town has no secrets, dear. You should know that by now. She settled into the armchair by the window. Now, tell me why you're hiding in this cabin instead of staying in your home. Dad made it clear I wasn't welcome. She sighed deeply. That son of mine has always been too proud for his own good. But there's more to it this time. She leaned forward. The business is in trouble, Amber. Serious trouble. What kind of trouble? Financial? Legal? I'm not sure of the details. Richard doesn't confide in me anymore, but he's changed. More secretive, more controlling with Diana and the children. She reached for my hand. Travis made some poor decisions with company investments. Jessica withdrew from her PhD program without telling anyone. Your mother barely leaves the house now. The picture she painted was disturbing. A family unraveling while maintaining a perfect facade. Why are you telling me this, Grandma? Because you deserve to know what you're walking into. She squeezed my hand. And, because despite everything, they're still your family. After Eleanor left, promising to visit again soon without telling my parents, I tried to process everything she'd shared. My phone remained silent. No calls or texts from my mother or siblings despite Rachel's mother undoubtedly spreading news of my return. I was contemplating my next move when another knock came at the door. This time, it was a tall, broad-shouldered man with kind eyes and a tool belt. Miss Sullivan? I'm Ryan Cooper. The rental agency sent me to fix that leaky faucet you reported. He worked quickly and efficiently, but I noticed him stealing glances at my military duffel and the dog tags I'd absent-mindedly left on the coffee table. Army? He asked as he was finishing up. 8 years. Just on leave for the holidays. My brother served. Marines. He stood, wiping his hands on a rag. You're Richard Sullivan's daughter, aren't you? I nodded, bracing for the usual reaction the polite distance people maintained when they connected me to my father's influence. Instead, Ryan frowned slightly. Must be tough coming back to all this. All what? He looked uncomfortable. Just town gossip. Nothing important. Please, I'd rather know. Ryan hesitated. There've been rumors about Sullivan Construction, government contracts that seem to appear overnight, competitors being underbid by impossible margins. Some of the local contractors who used to work with your dad have been blacklisted for major projects. He shrugged. Like I said, just talk. But it aligned too perfectly with what Eleanor had mentioned to be just talk. Over the next few days, I reacquainted myself with my hometown. The main street had new shops. The park where I used to play had been renovated. The high school had a new wing named after a local businessman. Not my father, I noted with interest. Everywhere I went, I felt eyes following me, whispers trailing in my wake. The prodigal Sullivan daughter returned for more only to stay in a rental cabin instead of her family's mansion. On day 4 of my leave, I ran into Jessica at Coastal Coffee, the cafe where we used to study together. She froze when she saw me, her expression cycling through shock, guilt, and something that looked like fear. Amber, she said finally, you're really here. In the flesh. I gestured to the empty chair across from her. Can I join you? She glanced nervously at the door before nodding. I can't stay long. Up close, my little sister looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and she'd lost weight since I'd last seen her. The confident academic star had been replaced by someone who jumped at the sound of the espresso machine. How are you, Jess? I asked gently. Fine. Busy with research. The lie came easily to her lips, making me wonder what else my family had become comfortable lying about. Grandma said you left your program. Jessica's eyes widened. Don't tell Dad you know that. Please. What's going on, Jess? What's happening with the family? She gathered her things hurriedly. I shouldn't be talking to you. Dad would. She cut herself off. Dad would what? She stood, slinging her bag over her shoulder. Dad's not well, Amber. You should stay away for your own good. She leaned down, her voice dropping to a whisper. And for ours. Before I could respond, she was gone. The bell above the door chiming cheerfully in her wake. That night, Ryan stopped by with firewood left over from another job. I suspected it was an excuse to check on me, but I welcomed both the warmth and the company. Learn anything interesting about your hometown? He asked as we sat drinking hot chocolate by the newly roaring fire. Just that everyone seems afraid of my father, including my own sister. Ryan nodded thoughtfully. Richard Sullivan has always inspired fear more than respect. But lately, he trailed off. What? Lately, it's like he's desperate. Making threats, calling in favors. Word is, he's in deep with some government contracts that aren't going well. Government contracts. The words triggered something in my memory. A casual conversation with my commanding officer before I left. Sullivan, isn't your father in construction? There's been some talk about irregular bidding on military infrastructure projects back east. I had dismissed it then. Now, I wondered, Ryan, what exactly does Sullivan Construction build these days? That's the thing. They've shifted almost entirely to government work. Military barracks, storage facilities, training centers, all projects that require security clearance. He looked at me curiously. Didn't you know? I didn't. And I was starting to think that might be exactly the point. On the 5th day of my leave, I noticed a black SUV parked across from my cabin when I returned from my morning run. It looked out of place among the modest vehicles typical for the area. When I drove into town later, the same SUV appeared in my rearview mirror, maintaining a consistent distance. I employed counter-surveillance techniques I'd learned in the Army: sudden turns, doubling back, varying my speed. The SUV stayed with me, though the driver was skilled enough to make it seem casual to anyone not paying attention. At a stoplight, I got a glimpse of the driver, my father. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. This wasn't about family reconciliation. This was surveillance. That evening, I found Travis at the Anchor, a dive bar where we used to sneak beers as teenagers. He was alone at the bar, nursing what looked like whiskey. He'd gained weight since I'd last seen him, and his once confident posture had deteriorated into a defeated slouch. Buy you a drink, stranger? I said, sliding onto the stool beside him. He startled, then gave me a lopsided smile that didn't reach his eyes. Look what the war sent back. 3 drinks later, Travis's carefully maintained facade began to crack. You were smart to leave, AM, he slurred, using my childhood nickname for the first time in years. Should have gone with you. What's happening with the business, Travis? He laughed bitterly. Business? What business? It's all smoke and mirrors now. He leaned in conspiratorially. Dad overextended, bid on contracts we couldn't fulfill. Then I made some investments that went south, really south. So the company's in financial trouble? Financial, legal, ethical. Take your pick. He drained his glass. Dad found a way to save it, though. Always does. What way? Travis's bloodshot eyes met mine. You don't want to know, AM. Trust me. He stood unsteadily. I should go. Dad tracks the mileage on my car now. The next morning, I received a text from an unknown number. Diner on Route 9. 11 a.m. Come alone. Mom. The Route 9 diner was 30 minutes outside town, far enough that my mother wouldn't risk running into anyone she knew. I arrived early, securing a booth with a view of both entrances and parking lot. My mother arrived exactly at 11, looking elegant as always in a camel coat and pearl earrings. But like Jessica and Travis, she showed signs of strained new lines around her mouth, a nervous flutter in her hands as she removed her gloves. "Amber," she said, her voice catching. You look strong. Military training will do that." She winced at the reference to my career choice, still a point of contention after all these years. "Why all the secrecy, Mom? And why is Dad following me around town? He doesn't know I'm here." She glanced anxiously at the door. "He monitors my phone, my car's GPS. I had to tell him I was getting my hair done in Portsmouth." She reached across the table, stopping just short of touching my hand. "You need to leave, Amber. Go back to your base. Forget about this Christmas visit." "Why? What's going on?" "Your father." She lowered her voice. "He blames you for everything. He's not rational anymore. When he found out you were coming home, he told me not to come." I interrupted. "After he learned you had already arranged leave." "After he..." She stopped herself. "After he went, Mom? It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're not safe here. None of us are with you stirring everything up." "I'm not stirring anything. I just came home for Christmas." "Please, Amber." Tears filled her eyes. "He blames you for everything. The business problems, Travis's mistakes, Jessica dropping out. He says if you had joined the company like you were supposed to, none of this would have happened." It was irrational, but classic Richard Sullivan, finding external blame for internal failures. "I need to understand what's happening," I insisted. "No, you need to leave." She stood abruptly. "I've done what I could. Warned you. The rest is up to you." After she left, I sat for a long time, processing. My military training had taught me to assess threats, gather intelligence, and formulate strategies. It was time to apply those skills to my own family. Back at the cabin, I began investigating Sullivan Construction. Public records showed a dramatic shift 5 years ago from local commercial projects to exclusive government contracts, primarily military infrastructure. Contract values had tripled, then quadrupled. Local news archives revealed complaints from competing firms about irregular bidding processes and conflicts of interest, all eventually dismissed. Then, I found something disturbing: a press release announcing Sullivan Construction's unique qualification status, due to having veteran leadership with high-level military security clearance. Sullivan Construction had no veteran leadership unless a chill ran through me as pieces began clicking into place. My father's sudden interest in military contracts coinciding with my rising rank. The security clearance I'd obtained during my second tour. The silence from my father despite my military achievements. He hadn't been ignoring my career. He'd been exploiting it. That night, returning from the library where I'd been researching, I found a note tucked under my windshield wiper. "Soldiers should know when to retreat." The handwriting was unmistakably my father's. I called Captain Wilson, careful to use my secure military line rather than my personal phone. "Sir, I need to ask you something officially. Has anyone ever requested verification of my security clearance or service record for civilian contracting purposes?" His pause told me everything. "There have been inquiries, yes. Standard procedure for family businesses with military contracts when a family member serves." "Why do you ask?" "I need to know if any documentation was ever processed with my signature authorizing Sullivan Construction to use my military credentials." Another pause, longer this time. "Sullivan, are you telling me you never signed such authorization?" "Never, sir. I'll look into it immediately. In the meantime, document everything and watch your back." That night, I barely slept, the pieces of the puzzle swirling in my mind. My father's desperate need to save his failing company. My convenient military credentials. The sudden influx of lucrative government contracts requiring security clearance. And now, federal investigations into irregular bidding processes. My father wasn't just estranged from me. He was setting me up to take the fall. I woke on the 7th day of my leave to my phone buzzing incessantly. 20 missed calls lit up my screen. 5 from my mother, 7 from Jessica, 3 from Travis, 4 from Eleanor, and 1 from Howard Reynolds, my father's lawyer and oldest friend. The voicemail started calmly enough but grew increasingly frantic. "Amber, it's Mom. Call me as soon as you get this. Amber, seriously, pick up. It's Jessica. Dad's in the hospital." "I am. It's Trav. Dad had a heart attack last night. It's bad. Call me. Amber, it's your grandmother. Whatever you're thinking, put it aside. Your father needs you." The last voicemail made my blood run cold. "Miss Sullivan, this is Howard Reynolds. I represent your family's legal interests. We need to discuss the matter of certain signatures before the situation escalates further. Please call my office immediately." I dressed quickly and drove to Portland General Hospital, my mind racing. Was this another manipulation? A trap to get me to the hospital where federal investigators might be waiting? Or had my father actually suffered a heart attack from the stress of his scheme unraveling? The hospital waiting room was a tableau of Sullivan family dysfunction. My mother sat rigidly in a corner chair, makeup perfect despite the circumstances. Jessica paced, biting her nails, a habit our father had always criticized harshly. Travis stood by the window, looking hungover and defeated. They all froze when I walked in. "How is he?" I asked, directing the question to no one in particular. "Stable," Jessica answered when no one else did. "Triple bypass surgery scheduled for tomorrow." Her eyes narrowed. "What did you do, Amber?" "Excuse me. Dad was fine until you decided to come back and stir everything up," she hissed. "He got your text and collapsed 20 minutes later." "I didn't text Dad." Don't lie. He showed us all the message. Threatening to go to the authorities? After everything he's done for you, I felt a cold clarity descend. I didn't send any text. And Dad hasn't done anything for me in 8 years except apparently forge my signature and potentially commit fraud using my military credentials. The waiting room fell silent. My mother's face strained of color. You don't know what you're talking about, Travis said. But his voice lacked conviction. Don't I? Sullivan Construction suddenly specializing in military contracts requiring security clearance, Dad following me around town, the lawyer calling about certain signatures. I looked at each of them. What did he do? What did you all let him do? Miss Sullivan. Howard Reynolds appeared in the doorway, looking grave. A word, please. I followed him to a quiet corridor away from my family. Despite being in his 60s, Reynolds stood tall and imposing in his tailored suit, every inch the high-powered attorney. Your father suffered a serious cardiac event last night, he began. After allegedly receiving a threatening text from me that I never sent, I finished for him. He studied me carefully. I've known your father for 30 years. He's a proud, difficult man, but he loves his family. Is that why he forged my signature to fraudulently obtain government contracts? Reynolds didn't deny it. Instead, he sighed deeply. The situation is complicated. Simplify it for me. Your father's company was failing. The recession hit construction hard. Then an opportunity arose for military contracts, but they required someone with security clearance on the executive team. Let me guess. Dad decided his estranged daughter in active service was the perfect solution. He thought you'd never find out. The credentials were just to get the contracts. The work itself was legitimate, except for the fraud part. Reynolds had the grace to look uncomfortable. Yes, well, that's where things got complicated. When federal auditors began asking questions, your father needed a contingency plan. He was going to blame me, I said flatly. That's why he didn't want me coming home. He needed time to set up the paper trail showing I was the one who authorized everything. Richard made some poor choices under extreme pressure. Poor choices? He committed fraud using my military credentials while I was risking my life overseas, then planned to let me take the fall for it. Those aren't poor choices. They're crimes. Before Reynolds could respond, my grandmother Eleanor appeared, moving faster than I'd seen since my arrival. Amber, she said, her voice tight with urgency. I need to show you something. She thrust a folder at me. I found these in Richard's home office safe. Inside were documents with my signature, or rather, forgeries of my signature, on security clearance authorization forms, contract applications, and military vendor registrations, all dated during periods when I had been deployed overseas. I always suspected Richard was hiding something, Eleanor said. After our talk, I decided to do some investigating of my own. Reynolds looked stricken. Eleanor, you broke into Richard's safe? I built that house, Howard. I know all its secrets. She turned to me. I've already made copies. These are the originals. A commotion down the hall interrupted us, my mother crying out, medical staff rushing toward my father's room. He's having another episode, Jessica called, her face pale with fear. For a moment, I hesitated. Despite everything, this was my father, the man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had carried me on his shoulders at parades, who had once been my hero. Then I remembered his text, don't bother coming home. And my response, fine. It wasn't just acceptance. It was a declaration of independence. I need to make some calls, I told Reynolds. Starting with my military legal counsel. The military moves quickly when one of their own is threatened. By that evening, I was meeting with JAG Corps attorneys in a secure room at the Portland Federal Building. They listened intently as I presented the evidence Eleanor had recovered along with my own findings. This is a clear case of identity theft, fraud, and potentially espionage if sensitive information was compromised, Major Lisa Hernandez, the lead attorney, concluded. You did the right thing coming to us, Sergeant Sullivan? What happens now? I asked. We coordinate with federal investigators who are already looking into irregularities with these contracts. Your father and anyone else involved will face questioning. She looked at me sympathetically. I understand this is your family. That makes it harder. My family made their choices, I said, though my voice betrayed more emotion than I intended. Outside the federal building, Ryan was waiting, leaning against his truck. Thought you might need a friendly face, he said. Rachel told me where you were. The simple kindness broke something in me. After maintaining military composure through the hospital confrontation and legal meetings, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of my family's betrayal. Ryan didn't offer empty reassurances. He just drove me back to the cabin, made hot chocolate spiked with whiskey, and listened as I processed aloud. The worst part is that they're still acting like I'm the one who betrayed them, I said. Like, coming home and discovering their fraud is worse than the fraud itself. People get weird when their secrets come to light, Ryan observed. They blame the revealer rather than face what was revealed. The next few days brought a flurry of activity. Federal investigators interviewed me multiple times. Military security officers audited every contract associated with my credentials. My father stabilized enough for his triple bypass surgery, which was successful, but he remained in the ICU. I stayed away from the hospital, focusing instead on clearing my name and untangling myself from my father's scheme. Travis found me at the cabin on the 4th day after everything broke open. He looked terrible, unshaven, bloodshot eyes, clothes rumpled. They froze all the company accounts, he said without preamble. Interviewed me for 6 hours yesterday. Did you know? I asked. About Dad using my credentials? He couldn't meet my eyes. I suspected. Didn't want to know for sure. And you were okay with that? With him setting me up to take the fall? I didn't know that part until it all went to hell. He ran a hand through his greasy hair. I'm sorry. I should have stood up to him years ago. We all should have. His apology felt inadequate against the magnitude of the betrayal, but it was a start. Jessica was next, appearing at my door the following day, looking equally disheveled, but more angry than repentant. They're saying Dad could go to prison, she accused. Is that what you want? What I want is irrelevant. Dad committed fraud. Multiple federal crimes. He was trying to save the business, save all of us, by sacrificing me, I pointed out. The daughter he already threw away. That's not fair. You left us. I joined the army. I didn't abandon my family. Dad is the one who cut me off because I wouldn't follow his grand plan. Jessica deflated slightly. He always had to control everything. Everyone. And you all let him. What choice did we have? The same one I made. To live your own life. I softened my tone. Why did you really leave your PhD program, Jess? Her eyes filled with tears. I was having panic attacks. Couldn't sleep. The pressure from Dad to be perfect, to be the academic success since you were the disappointment. She wiped her eyes angrily. I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. Dad said no Sullivan would waste their potential like that. Gradually, the full picture emerged. My father had been slowly imploding for years, trying to maintain control as his business faltered and his children sought independence. Travis's investment mistakes had accelerated the financial decline. In desperation, my father had seen an opportunity in my military service, a way to access lucrative contracts through my security clearance. When federal auditors began questioning the credentials, he planned to claim I had authorized everything, portraying me as a resentful daughter trying to sabotage the family from afar. My surprise Christmas visit had thrown his plan into chaos. My mother finally came to see me a week after my father's surgery. She looked smaller somehow, diminished without my father's commanding presence beside her. He's asking for you, she said. The doctors say his recovery depends on reducing stress. So I'm supposed to pretend everything's fine? That he didn't try to frame me for his crimes? I'm asking you to listen to what he has to say. She twisted her wedding ring nervously. I'm not defending what he did. It was wrong. Terribly wrong. Did you know? She couldn't meet my eyes. I suspected something wasn't right with the new contracts. Richard became secretive, working late, locking his office. But I never imagined he would use your credentials. She finally looked up. I should have protected you better, all these years. Her admission wasn't enough to heal the wound, but it was something. A crack in the Sullivan family facade. I'll think about seeing him, was all I could promise. Eleanor proved to be my strongest ally, using her position as family matriarch to rally support. She organized a small gathering at her cottage. Rachel, Ryan, a few of my old teachers and friends who had always believed in me. The Sullivans have always cared too much about appearances, she told me as we prepared food for the gathering. Richard worst of all. But real family isn't about maintaining perfect images. It's about loving each other through the imperfect reality. My commanding officer, Captain Wilson, called with news that my military record had been fully cleared of any suspicion. The investigators were impressed with your cooperation. Sullivan said you showed more integrity in exposing this situation than most people would have. Just did what any soldier would do, sir. No, he corrected gently. You did what a person of character does, even when it cost you personally. That's rarer than you think. The federal investigation moved swiftly. With the evidence Eleanor had provided and my testimony, prosecutors were building a strong case against my father. Howard Reynolds negotiated furiously, trying to minimize the damage. After 2 weeks of deliberation, I finally agreed to see my father. He was at home now, recovering in the master bedroom that had once seemed so imposing to me as a child. Now, with him propped up against pillows, medical equipment beside the bed, he looked diminished. Human. Amber, he said when I entered. His voice was weaker than I remembered. I stood at attention automatically, a soldier's instinct in the presence of perceived authority. Sir, I responded coolly. Don't call me that. I'm your father. Are you? You haven't acted like it for 8 years. He winced. I deserve that. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Why? I finally asked. Why use my credentials? Why risk everything, including me? He looked away. The business was failing. Everything I'd built. Everything I wanted to leave to you children. I was desperate. So desperate you'd let me take the fall? I never intended. He stopped, then corrected himself. No, that's not true. I did intend it at the end. When everything was crashing down, his eyes met mine. I've spent my life believing I was building something important, something that mattered. When it started to fail, I couldn't accept it. That doesn't excuse what you did. No. It doesn't. To my shock, tears formed in his eyes. I was always proud of you. You know? Your courage. Your independence. I just didn't know how to show it. Couldn't admit I was wrong to push you away. The admission stunned me. This vulnerable version of my father was someone I'd never seen before. That doesn't excuse what you did, I repeated, more softly this time. No, he agreed. It doesn't. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. 3 weeks after my father's heart attack, Sullivan Construction officially entered federal receivership. The fraud investigation had uncovered multiple violations beyond just the misuse of my credentials, tax evasion, bribery of local officials, falsified inspection reports. My father, facing overwhelming evidence, accepted a plea deal that acknowledged his guilt in exchange for a reduced sentence considering his health condition. The family business would be restructured under court supervision, with Travis and Jessica taking control once the legal issues were resolved. My father would serve his sentence, likely house arrest given his medical condition, and pay substantial fines that would nearly bankrupt the family. My mother, shell-shocked by the rapid unraveling of the life she thought she had, began seeing a therapist. Gradually, she started reclaiming parts of herself that had been subsumed by my father's domineering personality. She resumed teaching part-time at the local community college, rediscovering the passion for education she'd abandoned decades ago. I enabled him, she admitted during one of our cautious coffee meetings. For years, I chose peace over truth, stability over integrity. I won't make that mistake again. Jessica, freed from our father's expectations, re-enrolled in school, not for a PhD in psychology, but for a master's in early childhood education. The panic attacks subsided as she pursued her genuine passion. I spent so many years trying to be who Dad wanted, she told me. I barely know who I actually am. You'll figure it out, I assured her. It took me joining the army and getting shot at to find myself. She laughed, a genuine sound I hadn't heard from her in years. Maybe I'll skip that part of the journey. Travis had the hardest road ahead. As the favored son groomed to take over, his identity had been entirely wrapped up in Sullivan Construction and our father's approval. The company's restructuring and my father's disgrace left him adrift. I don't know how to be anything except Richard Sullivan's son and heir, he confessed during a rare vulnerable moment. Then become someone else, I suggested. Someone better. Eleanor hosted Christmas dinner at her small cottage, a far cry from the lavish Sullivan family celebrations of the past, but somehow more authentic. My mother brought her famous cinnamon rolls. Jessica decorated with handmade ornaments. Travis, making an effort to contribute, arrived with armloads of firewood and a selection of local craft beers. My father remained at home, still too weak to attend, and though no one said it aloud, not entirely welcome yet. The shadow of his actions hung over us but didn't define the gathering. Ryan joined us, fitting seamlessly into the strange new family dynamic we were creating. His steady presence and dry humor helped ease the awkward moments. Strangest Christmas I've ever had, he whispered to me as we washed dishes together. Also, maybe the best. The military granted me extended leave to deal with the family crisis and legal proceedings. Captain Wilson called regularly, ensuring I had the support I needed. Take the time you need, Sullivan, he insisted. Your unit will be there when you're ready to return. As winter deepened, I began to consider my future. I had 2 years left in my current enlistment. After that, possibilities stretched before me, continuing my military career, returning to civilian life, perhaps even coming back to my hometown permanently. I'm thinking of starting a veteran support program here, I told Ryan one evening as we walked along the snow-covered beach. After my service ends, something to help soldiers transition back to civilian life. Sounds like someone found her calling, he observed, taking my gloved hand in his. The most difficult conversations were with my father. As his physical health improved, we began the painful process of addressing the damage he had caused. I don't expect forgiveness, he said during one of our carefully structured visits. I don't deserve it. Forgiveness isn't about deserving, I replied, repeating words from the military chaplain who had helped me process combat trauma. It's about choosing to release the burden of anger. It doesn't mean forgetting or excusing. When did my daughter get so wise? He asked, a glimmer of his old self showing through. Somewhere between basic training and pulling wounded civilians from a burning building, I answered honestly. Slowly, painfully, we began rebuilding. Not the old relationship based on control and expectations, but something new, grounded in difficult truths and cautious hope. Eleanor watched our family's transformation with quiet satisfaction. Family isn't just what you're born into, she told me as we sat together on her porch, watching snow fall gently on the garden. It's what you create through love and truth and forgiveness. Even when it's messy? I asked. Especially when it's messy, dear. Perfect families exist only in photographs and Christmas cards. As spring approached, bringing my leave to an end, I reflected on the journey that had begun with a single text and my one-word response. When my father had written "Don't bother coming home" and I had answered "Fine," neither of us could have imagined where that exchange would lead. His rejection had ultimately freed me to find my voice and strength. My fine wasn't just acceptance, it was the beginning of standing my ground, of refusing to be controlled or manipulated any longer. If I could write a letter to my younger self, that uncertain girl who joined the army to escape her father's expectations, I would tell her, the rejection that breaks your heart today will lead you to the strength that defines your tomorrow. The family you fight to please isn't the only family you'll have. Sometimes, the hardest roads lead to the truest destinations. I found peace not in winning my father's approval, but in no longer needing it. I found family not just in blood relations, but in the people who stood by me through crisis. Ryan, Eleanor, Rachel, my military colleagues. The night before I was scheduled to return to base, I sat alone at the kitchen table in the cabin that had become a sanctuary over these tumultuous months. I wrote in my journal, sometimes rejection is direction. Sometimes fine is the most powerful word you can say. And sometimes, the family you fight hardest to be part of isn't the family you actually need. I'd come home seeking reconciliation and found revelation instead. The road ahead remained complicated. Legal proceedings continuing, family relationships still fragile, my father's health uncertain. But for the first time in years, I felt truly at peace with who I was and where I belonged. If you've ever felt rejected by those who should love you most, know that your worth isn't determined by their acceptance. If you've struggled to fit into someone else's vision of who you should be, know that the most liberating moment comes when you finally embrace who you actually are. What about you? Have you ever had to stand your ground against family pressure or expectations? How did it change you? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. And, if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that rejection sometimes leads to the most authentic version of yourself. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, sometimes the best response to "don't come home" is simply fine.